Hello everyone, welcome to From Combat Boots to Business Suits, the podcast brought to you by the Officers Association Scotland. I'm your host, Jane Burns, and my lovely guest today is Mr. Chris Watson. Welcome to the show.
Hi Jane, thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, it's a real pleasure to have you, and I think the subject matter of today's episode is going to be really interesting and resonate with a lot of our viewers and listeners. So we've been taking a bit of a deep dive throughout the series into specific sectors. We actually spoke to your colleague, Christian Jutua, as well. His episode should be coming up pretty soon, about his sort of journey of finding the right job. But with you today, what I think is going to be so interesting about this conversation is we're going to be doing a deep dive into the fact that you've come from a really rank-based system within the military, which kind of details your job progression and you kind of know what's ahead of you. But then how that translates or doesn't translate into civilian life and landing that civilian role, and how there could be a big disparity from the level of responsibility that you've left in the military to actually what you end up taking on when you secure that civilian job. So it's going to be quite an interesting conversation, I think. Before we get into it though, would you please give me a brief overview of your career in the military? What made you sign on? What happened in your years in the forces, and then obviously leading up to that moment when you signed off?
Yeah, so I'll try and condense the 25 years of service as best I can. Probably like most of the guys in the infantry, young, energetic. You need probably some more discipline than you were getting before you joined up, and I think I'd always had an interest in joining the army, and having been an army cadet and seen that I was kind of successful in that environment, I kind of thought, well, I want to keep crawling in the dirt and firing guns. Then there's a job there for me. So I was fortunate, kind of finished my education, probably more than most, but that probably stood me in good stead as well. Actually, having that background. And then, joined the light infantry in 1992 as a 17-year-old. And, I kind of progressed through the ranks, and I was fortunate to deploy on operations at every rank, which is probably quite rare, and specialised in reconnaissance and sniping for a number of years. I was very passionate about, and ultimately, I was pretty successful through my career, with the light infantry, and then subsequently the rifles when the regiment changed. And working your way from the bottom all the way to the top over a sort of 22, 24-year period. Very, very busy time for the British Army. Yeah. So I think I would say I was fortunate to have travelled the world and done all the operations that I ever wanted to, which probably led me to choosing to leave the organisation. Probably not normal for somebody in my position. A lot of guys would have stayed on and done the extra. But I felt at that point I wanted to see what was going on outside of the wire, which some people do and some people don't. But I always had that thought that maybe there was other stuff out there for me to do, and maybe get a bit of freedom after a good bit of service. But I had a good career. Yeah.
And how old were you when you decided to sign off?
So I had a 2-year extension to the age of 42, so my time was running out at the age of 41.
Right.
And that decision point around, do you stay until you're 55 and then try and find employment? I think that was a deciding factor, that I thought maybe at 42 I was still young enough to start a second career perhaps.
Absolutely, and that was the reason I asked actually, because throughout the conversations I've been having, that seems to be a recurrent theme, is that sort of age is kind of where people go exactly what you've just said. Either is it just worth staying on, or is this a good time to kind of go into the civilian world? And you I mean, a lot of us are going to be working. We're going to all be working well into old age, it seems. So you've really got a whole second working life ahead of you. So that makes perfect sense. So let's talk a little bit about your transition period. So you decided to sign off. What was that like? How long did you have? Did you have a year?
Yeah, it's interesting. So the kind of the time runs out, so when you're going to leave in effect.
Sure.
And there's an argument that says you should start your resettlement with 2 years to run as a minimum. I was, like a lot of guys, very focused on the job I was doing at the time, a lot of responsibility, and overcommitted probably to the organisation, still very loyal to the army and the regiment, and that was, a big learn afterwards. In hindsight, I didn't really commit to resettlement at all. The army did let me go a few months early, so I managed to kind of get out, but then I used that time to sort of kind of get established outside of the military. And yeah, I did this. I did the CTP. Did the kind of initial briefs. Maybe didn't even walk away with a CV at that point, which is another regret. But yeah, the clock's counting down. But yeah, I didn't invest in myself properly at that point at all, and that is something I would always share with people, that that there's a reason that you need that time to try and prepare yourselves. And some regiments are really good at preparing their people from day one, but maybe some others maybe not.
Do you think was it partially maybe because did you know what you wanted to do when you left, or was it really an enigma? I have no idea. So it's kind of a bury your head in the sand type situation.
Yeah, it definitely was I'm a senior manager in a professional organisation. I'm going to walk out and somebody's going to give me a job because they'll need somebody like me.
Yeah.
Very naively thinking that would
be the case.
Would be enough.
Yeah. But I think that's really honest, to be honest. It is, because if you think about the level of responsibility, the level that you were operating at, I'd think the same if I were you. Like, who wouldn't? You've got so much to offer. So, of course, I guess what we're kind of alluding to is that ended up not particularly being the case. So you'd obviously not perhaps committed to resettlement in the way that now retrospectively that you would do if you were doing it all over again. So when you actually uniform, everything's handed in, and suddenly you're out in the civilian wilderness, if you like, what process did you go through? What was it like when you were starting to apply for jobs and suddenly you needed that CV? Like what happened then? Because there must have been a point when you went, oh, actually, I've got to pull myself up by my bootstraps and get some work done.
Yeah, there's a point where things are gonna hit a crunch and you go, well, I want to get ahead of that. So pull together a sort of generic CV, but part of me was always thinking, I don't want to be the guy that sends 100 applications to 100 different jobs. I figured there was a better way of potentially tackling the problem. So with my kind of military head on, I was like, well, I live in Edinburgh. I want to live and work in Edinburgh. And somebody once said, if you can get a job within a mile of where you live, how good would that be?
Yeah.
And it just stuck with me. And I was like, well, Edinburgh's second financial capital of the UK, biggest employer in town. There must be roles for military in there. There's a lot of officers have transitioned brilliantly into financial services. And I thought there must be roles for other ranks within financial services, although very few that I knew of that I could speak to at that point.
Sure.
So that was a challenge. And I didn't have a LinkedIn profile when I left. I was quite anti it when I was serving. I think the operational security side, it wasn't something I was keen on doing, not on social media. But I did start a LinkedIn, profile, started connecting and networking with people. And Edinburgh's a brilliant city for networking. There's a great ex-forces community, and reaching out to your sort of predecessors in the Officers Association. It was through connections that I already had that I started to build that network of people who knew people who might know a hiring manager, who might know the jobs. And I think that's a big learn for me, was you have to put yourself out there. You have to meet people and, be really proactive in finding potential roles, and not just sitting at home sending out applications and not getting the responses. And I think in total since I've been out, I've sent 3 job applications. And yeah, I'm more comfortable with that. I want to meet a hiring manager face to face, and they need to meet you to understand if you're going to fit in the team.
Yeah.
And that brilliant, network of people that you've already got, which people underestimate. It's like, how do I start? You just connect with people that you know, and every soldier I've ever met since I've left would help another soldier.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter in whatever form, but ultimately, when we're all looking for employment, that you're not the only one. There's lots of people in the same position, and there's lots of people that are in secure roles now who will give you their time and advice and help you out. It's just that the psychological piece for me was coming from a senior position to then have to ask people for help, because that's not something that you would
that
naturally
doesn't come
do.
naturally to you.
No, because it didn't. I still probably struggle now to want to be vulnerable, to go, I need help.
Yeah.
But I think people, certainly in the military, would understand where I'm coming from.
It's one of those kind of things, isn't it, that probably pre-resettlement would never get it, but it's kind of a once you've done it, it's a kind of a once you know type scenario that anyone that's left the military, that's why I think, and you're absolutely right in what you say, and we hear it from clients. My husband was the same, having to really engage with this network is just how helpful ex-military want to be to other people that are coming into the process, because actually everyone's gone through the same thing and understand how difficult it is, and that it doesn't, getting that job doesn't speak for itself. It is a process that you have to go through, and I can imagine it probably felt quite humbling.
Yeah, that's a good word. Yeah. When there's certainly certain people that I know now that probably helped me secure my first role, and I'm not afraid to admit that it was the connections that they've exploited within organisations to assist you to get to meet the right people. So it's and that I'm now doing that for other people. So you understand how it works.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can think back in hindsight and go, that chance encounter with that one person actually started the ball rolling in the right direction. You didn't know it at the time, but now you do, and you go, I know those people, and they know who they are. I owe them a debt of gratitude, and I will, continue to support them and continue the good work that they do. And I think that's the great thing is, the paying it back is a massive piece. And
we'll get into it a little bit further on, because I happen to know from the conversations that we've had, you actually have done a lot of work to pay it back, particularly with your current employer and the Armed Forces Network and all. So we'll get into the work that you've done since to help other people who are going through the resettlement process. But let's kind of hone in on, as you said, you started to really use that network, and of course there were some key people that really helped you get your foot in the door. And also I think I really appreciate the approach and how you've described what you did, because especially in today's job market, just flinging CVs out into the ether is just not gonna work, because actually a lot of the problems that ex-military face when applying for the job, actually civilians are facing the same thing anyway, because the job market's so oversaturated that, especially for these big financial service companies, one role might be getting 100, 200, 300 CVs, and CVs from people all over the world. So yeah, that personal connection, to be honest, even if you're a civvy and you're listening to this, get on your network on LinkedIn, because it's gonna really help. So I think that's a cracking piece of advice. So tell me about the job that you did secure. How long did it take for you to get that first job?
Yeah, interesting. So January 17 was my last paid day, and I think it was literally there was a period just in the November of the previous year, so I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. Everybody's talking about project management qualifications, and I was like, okay, I'll maybe in the absence of anything else, let's have a look at project management. I had a friend who'd been through the FDM route, so sort of there's an ex-forces program. Great, I think that was, I kind of jumped on that as right, these guys are going to train me a bit. At least I'll have something for the CV. I'll get some qualifications. I had 6 weeks at their place in Glasgow, 5 days a week in an office environment, and people kind of just point you in the right direction about how to behave and what you need to do. And ultimately I walked away with some good qualifications and a potential of a role as an IT project manager. At that point, there was no jobs in the market, so I kind of did 3 months with them, waiting to see what was going to happen. So it's kind of like that was November through to sort of January, February, and it just nothing came of it. Which, you know, I'm always grateful for that. You know, I've got some stuff on the CV, I put it on LinkedIn, but ultimately, I was starting to reach that point of now things are gonna get tight, and
Yeah.
I need to find employment. Without pointing myself to the Middle East and doing security work and stuff, I knew I could do that,
Yeah.
and I'll be working in that environment with ex-forces, and I thought, you know, I can do that, but that's maybe not what I want to do. That's not going to see me living and working in Edinburgh. So
Yeah.
then, yeah, leaned a bit more heavily on the network. I met a few more people for coffees. The first time I met somebody for coffee, I didn't realise he was a very senior financial services guy from another regiment, and I was totally unprepared. And that's a big takeaway. I was using his time, and I didn't really appreciate it. I thought we're going for a brew, just for a chat.
Quite casual.
Quite
like,
cash.
Yeah.
I didn't realise it was basically an interview of
Okay.
sorts,
Interesting.
because, you know, these are the people that, you know, senior people in those organisations can tell people to give you a job if you know they've got that opportunity.
And what were sorry, just because I think that's a really, really good one. So did you kind of realise when you were sat with this person, like, oh my goodness, I've messed this up already?
Yeah.
And what was
Absolutely.
that? What were the cues specifically that were kind of giving you that impression? If you don't mind my asking.
No, not at all. I think he clocked that I was probably not prepared.
Yeah.
So I think
and was that in terms of researching the company and knowing
Exactly,
kind of more about
who is he, what does he do,
Right. Yeah.
What does his company do, you know, and also the classic question in financial services: what is it that you want to do in financial services?
rather than just financial services?
Yeah, it's and that's the naivety of where
Yeah.
I was at. I just hadn't done the background.
Yeah.
And I walked away feeling pretty terrible about, you know, I realised that I'd made a mistake.
Sure.
So, you know, I messaged him and said, look, you know, followed up as you do after a coffee, and then I realised that a coffee's not a coffee; it's an opportunity that you don't want to miss. So, you know, even now when I see him in town, I do still cringe
a
inside.
little.
And I'm sure he probably smirks, thinking, "Yeah, I got that XRSM to melt in front of me," because he didn't know what he was talking about. So, and that's something I share with people a lot is, you know, if I put you in front of somebody, I'm using my credit to say you're a good guy.
Yes.
You need to be prepared
Yeah.
for that, and I don't want somebody coming back to me saying, "I met that guy and he's not cutting it, or he's not what
Yes.
you told me he was."
Yeah.
And that's a
Well, it also jeopardizes you being able to put people forward in the future as well. So it's not just about that particular individual, isn't it? It's your credibility of them being able to go, I've bet this
absolutely.
other person that's, you know, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I really loved that you were honest about that. And I think, to be honest, most of our clients have probably had those same experiences of just feeling wholly unprepared. So I guess the takeaways from that would be research the company, research the
Yes.
person,
and research roles that are potentially available.
Yes, yeah.
In areas that you're interested in.
Yeah.
And if you're interested in a specific area, do a bit more research. It's not difficult anymore. You know, LinkedIn will tell you who's working where and for who, and, you know, join the dots.
Yeah.
Before you.
And it also, I suppose, what I'm kind of with hearing that story is, because we kind of brought up that word humbling earlier in the conversation, is that it just kind of takes an air of desperation perhaps away from you, the individual, rather than I'm here having a coffee with you, I want to work in financial services, give me a job, you tell me what I should be doing. It kind of, you're taking a little bit of ownership into you know, the situation that you're in. And
definitely. Yeah. That's a big learn still. But it, you know, that set me up for future success when I met people. But yeah, I'm sure it's one of those that there's lots of lessons you'll learn on the way through, and I guess some people will take it on board and some people won't. But certainly, yeah, I'll never make that mistake again.
So moving on from that learning curve then, how did you take that experience, harness it, and then where did you go from there then?
Yeah, so it was using the network and actually looking at roles that I thought I could do in financial services. So there was a role in a security team in Standard Life at the time. So I put an application for that role, and interestingly, their Armed Forces Network picked up through the hiring manager that I'd put in an application. I wasn't qualified, but I felt that I potentially could deliver in that space.
Yeah.
And I met the hiring manager for a coffee, and there was a member of the Armed Forces Network with them.
Oh, brilliant.
Interestingly. And that was, just over the road from Standard Life, and had a good chat. And the hiring manager was like, "I'm really sorry, you're not going to be able to deliver in this role because you don't have that experience that I'm looking for. There's people out there that I can just drop in, and I can't wait for you to get qualified in security and all the rest of it." So, but I think that was started a ball rolling internally with Standard Life. This hiring manager said, "Look, I've met this guy. He's a good guy. He's looking for a job with us. Who can help?" And through the network, I think they reached out to some hiring managers and said, "Look, maybe we could get somebody in on some work experience. Could we do that? Is that feasible?" And one of the hiring managers said, "Yeah, I'll take somebody on. He's got project management quals. We're looking at project managers, maybe 2 weeks unpaid."
Yeah.
And so I went in and had an interview. I met two hiring managers in two different areas of the business. They both kind of offered me an opportunity. And one of them was more leaning towards my logistics experience as an RQMS. And I considered it, and the other one was more of a project management role. So I had the quals, but no experience. So I thought, I'm going to, if I could. I mean, it was odd being offered two potential opportunities instead of just maybe one. And yeah, it was, I took 2 weeks. They kind of onboarded me after a week or so. And I got kind of like a 2-week program of just a little bit of familiarization, meeting people from all over the business.
Yep.
Wasn't really able to deliver a lot, but certainly learnt a lot. And towards the end of the second week, they offered me a 5-week work placement, which I hadn't been expecting. And they said, "Look, we can bring you in on the living wage for 5 weeks. So we've got budget to do that." I think they wanted to see a bit more of me and get me to actually deliver some stuff.
Yeah.
So, bit their hand off and said, "Well, okay, it's not a lot of money, but that's not what it's about. It's about the opportunity." So I did the 5 weeks, and I think it was probably 4 weeks in, and they offered me a permanent position, which I think is the lesson for everyone is we can all deliver stuff. We are good at what we do, and people will see it because and that's it's how do you enable them to see how good you are when you have no experience? It's that quick learning. It's your professionalism. It's your willingness to do anything.
Yeah.
And that's what they don't necessarily see that in everybody across business. It's, the military have that mindset of we'll just keep working till it's done.
And I think what you've done there by taking first the 2-week work experience and then the placement, again, something that perhaps people might go, 2 weeks unpaid work, 5 weeks on the living wage, but I need to, I need to pay my bills. I need this, I need that. I don't want to do that. And also there might be a bit of emotion around that. Feels almost like lowering yourself in some kind of a way to like accept, very little pay but what you've kind of done is you've managed to secure yourself a 7-week interview process. So where most people will go in and you've got maybe 20 minutes of chat, you were able to actually prove yourself a really valuable asset to that business within those 7 weeks, and the result has been a role. And do you feel like you kind of landed into a role that suited you because you'd been able to get to know them and they'd been able to get to know you and your skills over those 7 weeks of placement?
Yeah, I think it was definitely a big advantage, and unfortunately those opportunities are quite rare. I've not heard a lot of, certainly the business I'm in now, we're trying to work on getting that in. But I think it de-risks the hiring process as well for them.
Yeah.
So I guess another top tip is humans are quite binary. When you meet somebody, you've not got long to prove that you're friend or foe, or you're a good, ultimately you can try and be a good team player, but it's not. You realise once you're looking for roles, it's you could sit in front of a hiring manager in an interview, and you might not like the hiring manager, but you might take that role because you think, I need a job. That could be a mistake. And likewise, a lot of the hiring managers I've met, people make decisions quite quickly about people, because ultimately you don't want to bring somebody in who's going to destabilize the team. So I think just be mindful that it's a two-way conversation.
Yes.
You've got to look after your interests, but the business is going to look after theirs as well. So I think the opportunity was there to get it immersed in the business, meet lots of people, and I think probably towards the end, a consensus was that he's a good guy. We think he can deliver in that role. There's budget, potentially there. So let's offer him something, which was I wasn't expecting.
Yeah.
At that point, I was still looking, but I clearly wanted to stay with the business, but I wasn't sure there was a role.
Yeah.
At that point.
And if you don't mind my asking, so obviously to kind of bring it round to the I guess one of the main reasons why we're having this conversation is from you having come from a high ranking, high responsibility position. When they offered you that role, was it the type of role that you, or the type of package, I should say, and we don't need to get into the specifics of it, but was it the type of package that you would have envisioned when you first signed off? No,
definitely.
Yeah.
It wasn't. But then that's potentially I was naive to the realities of, because the company I was working at the time, and they don't necessarily publish salaries.
Yeah, it happens a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of a 50-50. Some companies will be very clear, and a lot of companies aren't. So I guess naively I had an expectation, and I was offered a role with a salary, and I did a small amount of negotiation, but ultimately I needed a job at that point. So I'm in a bit of a position where you're offering me a role. The numbers are not what I would be looking for.
Yeah.
But I thought, if I can, the chances are that there's opportunity for progression in the future. That was my mindset. And then somebody sort of did say to me once that it's the packages around, it costs an employer probably 30% more than your salary to employ you.
Yeah.
And I think I'm mindful of that. Some people might be dismissive and say, well, that's the reality, but I'm not dismissive of a good pension, private healthcare, and 10 other things that the business is paying for to try and keep me motivated and employed, as a help. And I think just it's an awareness of a hiring manager has so much money, but they don't necessarily want to spend the top end. They'll try and pitch it to get the right person in the job for the right money.
Yeah.
And over time, I've managed to work my way back up to where I was and beyond. So I think at the time it felt a bit of a blow. But look at it from the other side, the hiring manager, I've got no experience. So I still have to prove what I can deliver against.
Yeah.
And that's, the reality of the financial services. It's about what you can deliver.
Absolutely. One of the episodes that has been out a little bit earlier in the series, these are pre-recorded, of course, months before release, so you won't have seen it at the time of this conversation, but we actually sat down with a hiring manager from the Phoenix Group. And one of the things that she was talking about was for ex-military is to be aware of the package as a whole and not just the base, the salary itself, but as you'd said, take a look at what you're getting in terms of pension, healthcare, all of it, and try and see it as a complete offer rather than just honing in on the salary as much as you're able to, because of course people need to be able to cover their bills and they need to be able to live. And one thing, we're certainly not suggesting to put yourself into financial difficulty just to take a role. However, it is, you know, I think what you've said is really relevant, which is you didn't have the experience. These people were willing to allow you the chance to deliver, and what you've done, as you said, is you've worked your way back up. So when you joined the business, did you feel like, how long did it take before you felt that you were able to start really delivering and showing them what you could do?
Yeah, I think it took a little while. I think there's a, you know, coming from an infantry background, you know, financial services is very IT heavy, so it is the familiarity with lots of different software, you know, systems. It took me a little while to be comfortable, I guess, delivering against the role that I had. I was fortunate I was in a kind of team of other project managers that could offer some support through it. I don't, you know, don't take that for granted, but there was at least my manager at the time was very supportive. But yeah, I think there's also that in the mindset is you always want to deliver at 100%. That, you know, was not going to be the case, I think, because of the lack of experience. So it's a very steep learning curve.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess, you know, I was probably still a little bit naive to some of the pain that you have to go through when you're learning in a completely new environment.
Yeah.
With people that aren't in the you know, I don't think there's nobody in my area that was ex-military. So yes, I had the Armed Forces network, but I didn't have anybody in my team that could support me in that sense.
Yes.
And yeah, after 2 years, we went through redundancy. So it's just highlighting that job security is maybe in the military. I think I always thought I was going to have a job.
Yes.
There was never a question in my mind. Whereas, you know, when you're outside the wire, things change and you have to be prepared, I guess. And, you know, having that up-to-date LinkedIn profile, an up-to-date CV, staying connected with the right people.
And kind of nourishing your network even when you're in a role, and not just going, okay, I've got a role now, thanks, see ya. Like just keeping that kind of, nourished and forever expanding, because you never know when someone that you've helped may need your help in return, and also when, you know, the wheel, it's just kind of the way Civvy Street works, isn't it? The wheel, as you say, like these big companies go through redundancies and then they go through hiring, periods of hiring, periods of firing, if you like. So just knowing that network's there, and you've not just disappeared for 2 years and then suddenly popping up again going, hi, I need a job.
There's definitely a bit of that.
One of the things we obviously we'd had a couple of conversations prior to getting you in today to film, and one of the things that I found really interesting, and I, if you don't mind, I would quite like to touch on it, was you were talking about perfectionism, if I remember correctly, and how, especially your particular role that you came from in the military, you know, the sort of level that you were working at, that one of the things that you said that had really stuck with me was how you always wanted to hit 100%, because that you were the example to the soldiers, the ultimate example of so if you're not delivering at that level, how can you expect them to deliver at that level? Now, one of the things that comes up again quite often in conversations that we have with clients and also on this podcast is that sometimes that level of perfectionism doesn't quite work to your advantage on Civvy Street. Could you get into that a little bit, if you don't mind?
Yeah, there's a classic saying, I think it's, you know, 90% on time is better than 100% late. And I'd heard that in the military, and I did struggle with that whilst I was serving, but it makes sense in the military setting, and it's the same in the civilian world. There's probably always too much to do, not enough time, not enough resource, so you're always having to prioritize, and that aim of the 100%, because that's the standard you would expect from others, is you just have to accept that that's not always going to be the case. You know, it's more important to get stuff on time and maybe not quite 100%, depending which part of the financial services you're operating in. Obviously, it's, you know, a lot of it is numbers, and
Yes,
we need
yeah.
we need that part to be right. But certainly, maybe in the area I'm in now, there's a little bit more latitude in, it's reactionary to events sometimes that we have to, just get stuff done.
Yes.
And yeah, it's maybe not quite how you would want it to be.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I'm fully over it, but I understand that you can't spend quite as long as you might on certain things. You have to go, well, what's the priority? What am I going to do? It's the analogy I kind of use is, I'm working 7 hours a day for the company, and that enables the rest of my life. But those 7 hours I need to deliver for the company.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're paying you to do a job. You need to perform and make sure you deliver against what you've been tasked to do.
Yes.
So, that's a change from the military was, we'd work 24 hours a day. So you kind of, sometimes you dilute the task over longer periods. Whereas now it's, your diary can be meetings every hour for a day. And then you've got to figure out how to do all the follow-up.
Yeah.
And it's that focus, concentration that you need, which I do find slightly different. And actually, coming from a senior position in the military, the delegation side, I can't really delegate to anyone.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, of course.
So
Yeah.
you're so used to having a big team
Yes,
around you
yeah.
that can support you.
Uh-huh.
I've still got a team that can support me.
Yes.
But ultimately, if they're operating at 100%,
Yeah.
you can't pass stuff down the way, perhaps like you were used to. So that was a big change. People they work to live, whereas I felt the military was, you live to work. It's a total flip of
Yes.
the mindset. And that's not a bad, 90% of people, that's what they do. You work, which then enables you to do the stuff that you want to do. But whilst you're, in work, and certainly 2 years of COVID, I was sat at home working, and I'd been in an office for 2 years working, to then have to sit at your dining room table for 2 years and deliver the same quality.
Yes.
And continue to perform and improve and try and promote through the system. It's psychologically it's difficult because you're literally on your own.
Yeah.
Yes, you are connected via the internet on Teams and lots of meetings, but it's definitely very different from the office environment. So I think people need to be aware of, because some companies are hybrid working like I am, maybe 3 days in the office, two at home, which actually I quite enjoy. I've never, because in the military I never had that opportunity.
Yes.
But through COVID, I suspect they did. So yeah, it's been that perfectionism. I think it's just a trait that's drilled into you through the military from an early stage. So it's hard to.
That's the reason why I kind of wanted to kind of bring it up, is because I think that will resonate really strongly with a lot of people who are listening and watching this conversation. And I was wondering if, when you were saying how it can take a while to feel like you're starting to deliver in a role, and that's something that's again also quite universal, depending on obviously the sector that someone's working in, but particularly in financial services, because you are having to learn, so much new information and systems and all the rest of it. But do you think, I might be totally barking up the wrong tree here, but that perhaps a little bit of that perfectionism held you back from being able to deliver a little bit quicker than you would have had you not gone in with that sort of military precision sort of mindset?
Yeah, I think it can be, I'll say crippling, but it's certainly that desire to be the best that you can be.
Yes.
I think the American military say that, it's be all that you can be. It's you always want to do the best.
Yeah, of course.
And you feel that if you've not, then you failed somehow.
Yeah.
And then, that sort of self-castigation can kick in.
So Chris, I'm going to do something that I don't normally do when I'm in these interviews. I normally like to get the full through line of someone's career. However, because it's so interesting. I'm very interested in the bookends of your story so far. We've really got into the nitty gritty of those beginnings and those humbling experiences, what you've learned from. I think you've been so incredibly honest, and I'm so thankful of how you've mentioned, when you were talking about going for that coffee and not being prepared, taking the work experience and then the 5-week placement and all of this that kind of started off your civilian career. However, I'd actually like to jump forward now to today, because I think there's a really good full circle moment to bring up. So you currently work for Aberdeen, correct? And
Yes.
as you'd alluded to, you've kind of worked your way up now in the civilian world, and you're kind of package-wise happy with where you're at, got yourself back to a great comfortable position in terms of your package. Could you give me a brief overview of the job that you do now with Aberdeen?
Yeah, sure. So Aberdeen's a global asset management company, and I started out in their advisor business as the project manager, and sort of transitioned across into security, resilience, and protection, which covers sort of cyber, operational resilience, security, and a number of other sort of specialist areas. So I work in the operational resilience team. My first role with them was mainly business continuity, so I'd help all areas of the business across the globe to look at the impact and analysis of what can go wrong to the business, and help sort of capture that data and then work through problems with them and making sure we had all the contingencies in place. So it was a great first role in the team. I was dealing across the globe with lots of different people in different countries. And after a couple of years in that role, I kind of got the experience that I needed, and there was a promoted role came up that I was suggested that I should apply for.
Yep.
Initially, I wasn't sure, but I pushed for that, interviewed for that role, and was successful. So that's the role I'm in now as a resilience lead. I'm one of 2 in the company, and get to do a bit more management and sort of bigger project kind of type work and deliverables for that space. So it's I'm happy. I'm really, it feels like I found my niche within financial services.
Yeah, if you think back to that first, when you were offered that 2-week work experience to now, it's kind of funny because I kind of feel almost like your military career. You really started. You went in and started, and you worked your way all the way up, and you've kind of done the same now in your civilian transition, haven't you? You've just kind of worked and grafted and gained the experience. I get the sense from you that you're very much a person of, you want to prove your worth. You don't want anything to be kind of taken for granted or handed to you. You're really like, no, I'll show you that I can deliver, and I will deliver. And it seems to have paid off now for where you are now. Is that a fair assessment to make?
Yeah, I think so. I think you can underestimate your own ability. So I think that step up, I think, was like, well, I'm maybe not sure that I could deliver in that role, but everybody around you's like, no, apply for the role.
Yeah.
You can definitely do this. This is your next step. And there's still an opportunity for further promotion in the future. So there is that similarity, but there's a lot less steps. In the military, every 4 years, if you're performing, you can promote. And that's there. Whereas I think in civilian life, it's you look at a civilian's career, there may only be 2 or 3 steps that they might take, or none.
Yes,
some people
absolutely.
just stay in the same job for their whole career, and that's fine. It's just so there's that. I never in the military was trying to get to the top. I just put in 100%, and people promoted
responded
me on
to that.
and that's great. But I think every time I always thought, he promoted me again for this.
But that's good. That's good, because that also
Surprise.
shows that you, again, that there's a humbleness there, and not just an arrogance of, I should promote. It's you're promoting on merit, and you're doing the same now. I mean, what a stark contrast from what you told me about when you were offered that 2-week work placement of, oh, I can't take a chance on you to offer you a job, but I could offer you some work experience, to now you going, I'm not sure I can take that step up, and the people around you going, yes, you absolutely can take that step up, like, go for it. Your work has spoken for it, and your work ethic has spoken for itself, and that must feel quite good.
Yeah, I think I'm not great at taking praise, but I'll I do understand that if enough people say, you can do this, then yeah, don't,
Don't hold yourself back.
another one of when you're like, no, I'll pass this time, and everybody's like, no, please just do as you're told.
And so when we spoke earlier, you actually had a really great analogy that I would like just for a reference point for our viewers and listeners, because you had quite a good analogy to kind of describe, or at least comparison of rank between the job position that you started in and then the job position you are now, in terms of how that would maybe translate into the military. Could you let us know that, just so that I think that just for people at home to kind of understand kind of where you started and where you're at?
Yeah, I guess coming from a senior warrant officer in the army, the first role that I came into, I guess it was kind of, it felt like the deliverables were sort of a platoon sergeant kind of responsibility and level of technicality, and then the pay was probably near a lance corporal. So there was what it felt like at the time. Whereas now, because of the experience I've got, I can operate at a more technical level with more responsibilities. It's probably nearer working at sort of the ops officer level, sort of a captain. If you were to compare between civilian and military, which is where I would hope to be. I think because there is no officers' mess and sergeants' mess. It's you're just one team.
Yeah.
But there is a hierarchy. There is some structure, but it's a lot flatter than we're used to in the military. And nobody's wearing badges of rank. You walk past the CEO, in the corridor. Some people wouldn't even know who that is. Obviously, I do, because being military,
You're like,
you need to know who everyone is in the organisation. Know who the important people are. But yeah, there is no rank on this new safari. It's very much your manager's your manager, but they don't wear rank as such. They have different responsibilities, and one of them is to look after you. So I have no line management responsibilities currently, which actually, coming out of the military, is fine. I've done my fair
done enough
share.
of that. And so now, just to kind of wrap up the conversation, you were so honest about leaning on your network when you came into resettlement, and I do happen to know, because obviously at the OES we have worked with you now for quite a number of years, and I do happen to know that you are doing fantastic work in paying it back. And you might I don't want to make you sing your own praises a bit too much, but you have been very heavily involved with us now for a number of years, speaking at a lot of our events and offering opportunities to others. So that really has also come full circle. So would you mind chatting to us about the work that you do with the Armed Forces Network within Aberdeen and beyond?
Yeah, absolutely. So Aberdeen, or Standard Life as it was, has had a network for about just over 10, I think it's at least 10 years they've had a network. So I was fortunate to come into an organisation that already had that kind of collection of ex-forces within it. There were not many. We're still not a big armed forces network compared to some of the other big companies. However, we are pretty proactive, and that's the classic military saying we.
Yes.
Because we don't like to talk about I. So quickly got embedded into their network, volunteered, ended up on the steering committee within the first probably week. And then I got volunteered as the chair pretty quickly after somebody left. And I was the chair and a co-chair for 4.5 years. And then thought maybe I should let somebody else do a bit of this work. But it allowed us to do things like the Defence Employee Recognition Scheme, which is a good indicator of a company support to ex-forces. We've worked through bronze, silver and gold. We've just recertificated for gold after 5 years. So, we have made commitments to the ex-forces community and the business and our board and our shareholders that we will do the right thing. And yeah, that's led to lots of other things, my continued support for the Officers Association, which now, looks after all ranks in Scotland. And
because you may have been the first, if not one of the first, non-commissioned clients that we had, correct?
I think that's correct. Yeah, I'll let
Don't
somebody else
fact
confirm.
check us at home.
Yeah.
But yeah, that you were kind of the first of, if not the first, but one of the first that kind of gave us that transition into helping others. How did that come about?
The network, my network. There was probably somebody who gave me the name of the chief exec at the time, and yeah, they came in for an interview and a chat, and then progressed from there.
So you definitely started to get involved in all of that really quickly. You've embedded yourself in the role as chairman. You also now you were telling me you've kind of gone a step above.
Yeah, so
the network, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. So it's a recent addition to the sort of the business, where there's now a colleague council. So there's a small collection of employees that kind of report more there's the networks that do like the Armed Forces Network, which do loads of great work. But there's now a more direct line for certain colleagues to engage with the executive leadership team, kind of giving a ground up view of what's going on across the business. And that's, almost a promoted role within the business. And I guess that keeps me busy, as well as supporting the Armed Forces Network.
Yes.
But I think the fact that the business allows people the opportunity to be involved in various networks and gives people the time and opportunity to support those, because they understand the why it's important.
Yes.
So yeah, I've been fortunate that all my managers have supported me in that, what we would call off the side of your desk role, because they see the opportunities, and it allows you to develop a network across the business, which is beneficial to all. So I'd encourage anyone to get involved in those additional activities, like being in the military. You get those appointments, the mess appointments that nobody really wants, but actually enhances your profile. So how do you improve your opportunity for promotion? It's the extra 10%. It's what is it that you're doing that somebody else isn't? So,
and maybe that's interesting when you're saying, when you said 10% there, this is maybe such a corny thing for me to say, I'm not sure, but you know how you were talking about 90% on time is better than 100% late. Maybe that's just to maybe tap into your perfectionist brain a little bit. Maybe that extra 10% of that extra stuff you do is how you then deliver 100% within a civilian organisation. Is that a fair thing to say, or if I just said something really dumb?
No, I think there's something in that. There is a theory you should only ever operate at 90% of your capacity, so you've always got a bit in reserve. But maybe there is that piece around, certainly what motivates me to stay with a company.
Exactly. It makes you that more rounded employee.
It's that extra bit. And it gives you an enhanced profile, in effect, because you are engaging with the board and executives, which is an opportunity that not everybody gets. So you get to influence potentially now, the improvements for all your colleagues.
Yeah.
But that takes time and trust. And I think it's building that trust within the organisation that you can deliver, and you're a good person.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the ex-military, you don't understand that what you do bring, because you're like, well, what are my transferable skills? It's probably because you're a good person at heart, and you mean well, and you always want to do the right thing.
Yes.
And sometimes you get opportunities like I've had to pay that back.
Yeah.
And I don't think about it much personally, but when people do call it out, you do think, okay, yeah, I'm doing the right thing.
You are doing really good work, and I can, on behalf of the OAS, I can say that the work that you have done has really directly impacted a lot of clients of ours, even for the better. So you have really paid that back and then some. I just, before I ask you the very last question, I just wondered, again, coming full circle, have you ever now sat for coffee with someone who's been wholly unprepared and thought, mate, I've been you. I've been there. You don't need to say who, but I'm just curious.
I'd love to say that that somebody was as bad as me. But I have met a few people, but I would say the majority have probably picked up on the fact that, or I may be more forgiving in so much.
Well,
as,
that's what I was wondering,
guess
because you
that,
can
and I
understand
think,
the situation that
So having been in that position, I guess I'm a bit more flexible, but I do, with my RSM head on, I do give them some debrief points at the end and say, if I was your hiring manager, you maybe want to think about X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
So I try and
That's great.
not I try not to be me, but I try and help them for when the opportunity does come.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Chris, listen, this has been a wonderful conversation. I must thank you first and foremost for how candid and honest you've been. I think, again, you might not realise now sitting here, but I think this conversation is going to resonate with so many people out there, and help them as well. So thank you so much for your time today, and thank you also to Aberdeen for giving you the time again to come and sit here with me. The question that I ask at the end of every episode that I haven't briefed you on before is, we are of course called From Combat Boots to Business Suits, and we have our merch here. As a little side note, you've had your brew from your official podcast mug, and that is yours to keep as a thank you for your time here today. I do expect you to drink every single brew you're ever going to drink for the rest of eternity from this mug, unless we go viral and then you can sell it on eBay for a lot of money. However, we're called Combat Boots to Business Suits for a reason, and I just wondered, which of these do you feel now that you've been out of the military? How long is it now that you've been?
I'm
7 years. So after 7 years, do you feel a stronger affiliation to combat boots or business suits?
Definitely business suits now, although I rarely wear one, fortunately. But I'll be honest as I can be. It took me 5 years to stop looking back.
Yeah.
And that's normal, I think. But it took a long time to not want to be somewhere else.
Yes.
And as much as I would, still partly think I would go back, it wouldn't be the same organisation that I left. So I was fortunate. I left in a really great place with great people. I chose my time, but certainly now I have the freedom that civilian life offers me.
Yeah.
I wouldn't change that now. But
thank you.
Thank you.
It's a great answer. So for all of you watching and listening, thank you so much. I hope that you've enjoyed this episode and this conversation with Chris. Please be sure to like, share, subscribe, follow wherever you're watching or listening to this podcast. And also, if you have any specific questions for Chris that you feel like we didn't get into, or if anything that we've spoken about has sparked a question, please drop it in the comments below. Wherever you're watching and listening, we will be paying attention, and we can also happily pass on any specific questions to Chris if there's anything else that you would like to know. Furthermore, if you're just starting your resettlement journey, please sign up to the Officers Association Scotland. We would love to hear from you. Please come along to one of our fabulous events. And yeah, we will see you next in 2 weeks' time for another episode. Chris Wilson, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jane.